And number two is the medical profession does miracles. However, there are great problems in the medical profession. Medicine does miracles with trauma, like if you break something or you have to cut something out or put something back in, they do miracles. However, if there are illnesses like cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, these kinds of illnesses, medicine does not do a very good job. And the reason it is not the practitioner, it is the education that we provide to the medical doctor. I was a professor in medicine. I taught medicine for 20 years. And we do not provide a proper and complete education. And the main reason, the pharmaceutical industry does not want us to teach how you can heal yourself. So if I say something bad about medicine, it's not the medical doctor. Okay. I am a cellular biologist, and I want to tell you about a misperception you may have. When you look in a mirror and see yourself and you see like one person looking back, that is not true. You are made out of 50 trillion cells, and the cells are the living entities. So you are a community, not a single person. But your mind is the government for the 50 trillion cells. And if you have a good government, you have health. If you have like a United States government, then you are sick.
Dann schaut's schlecht aus.
So the part that is the powerful part is in the mind. The cells, I will talk about cells for this reason. Because every function that you see in the human body is already present in every cell. Every cell has a respiratory, a digestive, an excretory system, a nervous system, and even an immune system in every single cell. So it's easier to understand how one cell works than to try to understand how 50 trillion cells work. There are two, in philosophy, there are two beliefs about how life works, and they're very different opposing beliefs. These beliefs come from the time of the ancient Greeks before Christ. And the first belief is from a man called Democritus. He is the man that gave us the word atom. And this is what he said about how life works. That what you see physically is all there is. There's nothing in the empty space. If you want to understand life, then you have to understand atoms, and that means uncuttable. The smallest thing is an atom. And there's atoms, and then there's empty space. So atoms are in space. And then motion is when atoms hit each other and bounce like a billiard ball. So life is atoms colliding with each other. A completely different point of view is provided by Socrates. He has a dualistic vision. One is there's an invisible energy which he calls a form or a soul that gives shape to matter. That this energy was here before life and will be here forever. The energy is separate from matter. That the energy is perfect and ideal, and it is unchanging. Then he talks about the material world, the physical world, and he says that the physical world is imperfect or a corrupt shadow of the ideal. So, for example, you can imagine the concept of a perfect circle, but you can't, with a pencil, you can't make a perfect circle. So that the invisible world is perfect and the physical world is not. And this is the foundation of like the church that says that this world is not where we want to be. We want to be in the perfect world. So there are two beliefs of how cells are controlled. One is the control comes from the outside in, And the other is that the control is from the inside and goes out. The belief of the outside control is from Socrates, that a form or a soul comes in and gives life. And the followers of Socrates are spiritualists. In contrast, the followers of Democritus talk about atoms and mechanism. And in today's world, religion is the follower of Socrates, and science follows Democritus. Okay. The belief in Democritus is based on the work of Isaac Newton. Newton was studying what they believed the space and the stars were like a giant machine, a celestial mechanism. Then he created a mathematics called calculus and put in the data, for example, of the moon going around the Earth, and he included mass, gravity, and acceleration. And with his equations, he could predict the accurate movement of the solar system. But he did not put God in the equation. He did not put spirit into the equation, or a soul, no energy. So he predicted the universe based only on studying matter. And in conclusion, he said the universe is a machine. And if it is a machine, then the concept of Democritus was right, and that Democritus was based on materialism. So science, including medicine, does not include invisible forces, energy, spirit in their understanding. And the concept of René Descartes, he talks about a body, and then he said, cogito ergo sum, and he came up with the mind. But after Newton, then we separate the mind from the body, and this is a vital force. And in Newtonian physics, which is based on matter only, you eliminate the vital force in the mind. And then medicine only has the body left to study, the physical body. So in the universe, if the universe is a machine, then you can take it apart and study it, and then you will know how the universe works by looking at the pieces. So they look at the human body, and the human body is a machine. So in medicine, they take apart the body, look at the molecules, and then try to determine your health by just looking at the physical molecule. So the mission of modern science is to obtain knowledge that can be used to dominate and control nature, which is a machine. So the important understanding is, where is the control in the human machine? And from Charles Darwin, he said that the control is passed from parent to child because the traits of the parents are expressed in the child. And since they were only looking for physical things, chemicals, they took apart the sperm and the eggs to find which chemicals control life. And 100 years after Charles Darwin, James Watson and Francis Crick told us the story of DNA. The DNA is a double helix, and the pattern for the human body's materials are in just one single helix. So each strand has a pattern. The pattern is in what they call bases. And the bases, the letters of the bases are A, T, C, and G, the genetic code. And the sequence of the bases determine the structure of protein. And there are over 150,000 different proteins to make a human body. The proteins provide for the physical structure, and the proteins also provide for your functions. Based on his belief, Francis Crick created what is called the central dogma. It is like the 10 commandments of biology. It says that you are protein. You're the protein. But where do you come from? And the information flows in one direction, from DNA to RNA to protein, which is you. So your fate and your structure is programmed in the DNA. The concept of the central dogma is what I taught in the medical school. And I did not know the meaning of the word dogma until I left the university. And the definition of dogma is a belief based on religious persuasion and not scientific fact. So for 20 years, I was teaching religion in medical school. The other name for central dogma is the primacy of DNA. And primacy means first cause. So anything about your life, the first cause is DNA. DNA controls life. The genes are DNA. So in this image, were you born that way? It reveals our belief that all of your traits, physical, behavioral, emotional, are all programmed in the DNA. When we were teaching this in the school, we call it genetic determinism. Genes control and determine the character of your life. But you didn't pick the genes you came with. You can't change the genes you came with. So you become a victim of your heredity. If cancer is running in your family or heart disease is running in your family, you believe that you will be a victim of the same disease. So science teaches you that the genes are the controlling device, and that makes you powerless. And when people believe they're powerless, they become irresponsible. But the question is, what kind of belief do we teach in the end? So what we were teaching in medical school is conventional belief that the medical model is that you are a biochemical machine controlled by genes. And the significance of that is, this is based on logic. If a healing profession works in agreement with nature and science, then that healing profession should be a benefit to the patients. But if a healing profession does not understand science and nature, then it may be a detriment to the patient. The leading causes of death in the United States are as follows. Number 3, cancer, with 553,000 people die every year. Number 2 is cardiovascular disease, with 700,000 people die every year. And the leading cause of death is called iatrogenic illness. And what that means is illness due to medical treatment. 784,000 people die every year from medical treatment, not from the disease, but from the treatment of the disease. So the question is, if we are so able to be healthy and young, why do we get sick? And one of the most important reasons is stress. I will now show you about how stress works using cells and then people. So I put cells in a petri dish, and I split the group into two sets. In one set, I put nutrients in front of the cells. The other, I put toxins in front of the cell. I put them back in the incubator, and I come back later and take them out. Where do you think the cells are in each experiment? When you come back, when nutrients are in the cells, in the dish, the cells move toward the signals as positive growth signals. But when toxins are in the dish, the cells move away from the threatening negative signals. So when the cell sees something that gives growth, they move to the signal with their arms open to take it in. But if the cells see toxins, then what they do is they move away from the signal and close themselves down. Cells cannot be open and closed at the same time. Cells cannot move forwards and backwards at the same time. The conclusion, cells can be in growth or they can be in protection, but they can't be in both at the same time. Frage.
Does Bruce believe that the expectations of the scientists affect the movements of the cells towards the toxins or nutrients?
Yes. But if you do the experiments without expectation, then the results are independent of you as a scientist. It's a very good question. I'll tell you why. When research on drugs is carried out by the drug company it will be 4 or 5 times more in their favor than when the same research is carried out by independent people. So it's thought the scientist is very important in the process. So cells cannot move in both directions at the same time. They cannot be in growth and protection. So in summary, cells move to positive signals when they're in growth. They're attracted to positive signals. And cells will move away from negative signals. They'll be repulsed, but they're in protection. But there are signals that are neither positive or negative. I call them elevator music. When you get in the elevator, you don't dance, but you don't get sick. But the same thing happens in humans. The mind will perceive the environment, and if it sees what it believes to be threatening, it will send a signal to the cells telling them that the environment is not supporting. And the system is called the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. The hypothalamus is the part of the brain that interprets the perception. When the hypothalamus sees stress, it wants to tell the whole body something is going on. So it sends a signal to the pituitary gland, which is called the master gland. And that gland sends signals to 50 trillion cells. But if it's a threat, it will send the signals to the adrenal glands. And the common understanding of the adrenal glands is fight or flight. Then the adrenal glands release stress hormones to the body. And the first thing the stress hormones do, and I'll make a quote from a physiology textbook. The stress hormones cause the blood to preferentially go to the arms and legs. And why the preference for arms and legs? Right, that's so you can run or fight. But you missed something when I say it that way. If the blood is preferentially going to the arms and legs, where was the blood before it was going to the arms and legs? It was in the viscera. And what's the function of the viscera? Growth, health, maintenance. Okay, so then logic. If the blood leaves the viscera, what happens to your ability to grow and maintain yourself? Well, it goes down, and the reason is when you're in protection, you shut off growth. So like the single cell, the whole body is in growth or protection, but not both at the same time. Now, some people think of growth from a baby to an adult, but everybody needs to grow every day. Even if you're 100 years old, you need to grow every day. And the reason is that your cells are dying every day. Billions and billions of cells, like the lining of the gut, has to be replaced every 3 days. That's why chemotherapy is very toxic. Because chemotherapy kills dividing cells, whether they're cancer cells or normal cells. That's why people that are on chemotherapy have trouble with digestion, and their hair falls out and doesn't come back, and the skin doesn't grow well. So if your days are filled with stress, then you are putting lots of hormones in your body to direct you for fight or flight. And that is why you start to get sick when you're under stress, because you are not replacing the cells at the normal rate. Okay, now there's another important effect about stress. When the hormones go from the hypothalamus to the pituitary and then to the adrenal gland, it releases the stress hormones. As I said, the stress hormones cause the blood to go from the gut to the periphery because the hormones squeeze the blood vessels in the gut closed. And the function of the stress hormones is to take the energy of the body and get it all to run and fight. So the stress hormones will shut off the functions of things that will not be needed in fight or flight. One of the most important uses of energy in the body is the immune system. And now think of this, the logic. Let's say you have a bacterial infection and you have diarrhea, and a lion is chasing you. How much energy should you put in to fight the infection, and how much energy should you put in to run away from the lion? Forget the immune system, because if the lion eats you, then the bacteria are his problem. So the issue is this. Stress hormones shut off the immune system. And the significance is, it's important, is that every one of you right now is infected with almost all of the disease germs that humans have. Right now, if I take a blood sample, I will show you you all have viruses and bacteria and parasites. And you might say, well, if I'm infected, then why am I not sick? Because if your immune system is working properly, it will suppress these parasites and germs. But the moment you start to shut off the immune system, then these organisms begin to start growing again. So the idea that you catch a disease is not really true. You already have the disease. And the medical people call these germs and parasites opportunistic organisms. So if you are under stress and you shut off the immune system, then you give these organisms the opportunity to then make the disease. And yet, when we get some of these diseases, we go to the medical doctor and they give us drugs to kill the germs and the bacteria. Well, this is very helpful if the disease is going very quickly. That was not the problem in the first place. The problem was stress that shut off the immune system. So to get healing is, okay, treat the disease, but also treat the stress. Okay, so now we have two problems with stress. It shuts off growth and it shuts off the immune system. There's a third problem which I call it's adding more stress. It's adding more stress. A third problem. When you are in fight or flight, do you think you use conscious reasoning or reflex behavior? You use reflex behavior. So very important. Listen. The stress hormones, I said before, squeeze the blood vessels in the gut, causing the blood to go to the periphery. But when the stress hormones come into the body, they also go to the brain, and they squeeze the blood vessels in the front of the brain where consciousness is, to push more blood to the back for reflex behavior. That means when you're under stress, you are less intelligent. And for my example, I give you the people of the United States. And the reason is the government knows this. And ever since 9/11, they keep in the media, the newspaper, the television, more stress, and the result is very important. And the importance is this. Since 9/11, every year, the pharmaceutical companies have made 20% more profit every year. In 5 years, 100% more profit in selling drugs. So it's important to realize that stress affects you in many different levels, but all of them result in shutting down your life.